Hey, book lovers. I'm Aubrey.
And I'm Peyton.
And today we are reviewing Ali Hazelwood's steamiest book, Deep End, or Wet, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, whatever you want to call it. Well, start with a cup of coffee as we dive between these paper sheets. Let's do it. Alrighty, welcome back to the Hardcover podcast.
Hey.
Watch out, this is the splash zone. Before the podcast started, Aubrey and I were just quipping like different little phrases. Like, this is the wet end, not the deep end. Like, things are about to get a little like hot in here. We're getting hot, we're getting wet, we're getting heavy. But this is a book review, and so we have our NS section, which is non-spoiler, and then we're gonna jump into our spoiler section after. We always let you know this is also a brand new book, so our NS section will probably be a lot shorter, only because we don't want to give away any of the juicy details.
There's only so much you can talk about a romance book before you're just spoiling it.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. There's no crazy plot in this book. So with that being said, we like to start with like a little blurb about the book to get you interested.
Yes. If you haven't heard, Deep End follows our main girl, Scarlett Vandy, who is a pre-med Stanford student and diver, when the captain of her team complains that her perfect boyfriend is actually kinky as shit, as Scarlett would say, and that phrase will be in the book
a lot.
Many, many times. So she lets the girl know, the captain, like, hey, just so you know, I'm also into kinky shit if you just want to talk to someone about it. Well, the next chapter, obviously, because this is a romance, Captain and her kinky boyfriend break up. Captain gets drunk at said party and tells them, hey, you two should fuck. And plot and BDSM stuff launches from there.
Correct. It's so funny because Aubrey read this book before me, and she was telling me all of this, and I'm like, wait, this happens in like the first like 2 chapters? She's like, yes.
Yes. This is how we launch into our narrative.
Which is crazy. So going over these characters, we have like quite a few, but enough to get a little like, who are you again? But enough to be like, okay, cool. So we have Scarlett, who the whole book is just Vandy. They just call her Vandy. Her last name's
unless
Vandenberg.
You are the love interest, and it's Scarlett.
Which is so 50 Shades, because in 50 Shades, her name's Anna, and Christian Grey only calls her Anastasia. Or whatever the fuck her name is.
And then we have Luke, who is our male love interest, and he is Scandinavian, I believe. It's been a minute now since I've read the book.
Sweden.
I don't know how to pronounce his last name. I'm going off of memory.
I saw it there. I would, maybe. I listened to some of this book, which we'll get to in a second. But yeah, it's something crazy. And she even jokes in the book. She's like, I don't know how to spell his last name, so I don't even try.
Yeah, that's a plot point. And then we have Penn, which is the captain of the team person who was dating Luke before they broke up, and then becomes like really close friends with Scarlett. And she plays an interesting role in the book. Let's just say that. So I think our characters were pretty well developed. I mean, Ali Hazelwood, especially with romance, like you kind of have to like make it a character story because you can only do so much fucking, though she certainly tries her best.
Yes. Yeah, the characters, and there's like the main love interest is a swimmer, and then Scarlett or Vandy is a diver. And so like we kind of get that imagery. And there's people on the team that like make it fun and like,
yeah, we have a good like cast of side characters that don't
like,
really
this
matter.
Person's here, like they lighten the mood or like add to the plot a little more. But yeah, I would say those are like our 3 key players in this story.
Yes. Talking about kind of plotting, we're going to get to our romance because that's the steamiest thing. Yeah. But our main character, Scarlett, is suffering with some PTSD from a really bad diving incident back in like her freshman year, and now she's a junior. And I just want to talk about Ali Hazelwood's kind of like her writing style for a minute.
Yes.
She includes these like very short snippets of Scarlett's therapy sessions as she works to like overcome this like internal, struggle. And I thought it was so perfect. Like, never did I feel bored in those therapy sessions, and they'd be so fucking short because you're just getting like what matters.
Yes, there's something about, and we read a collection of short stories over Christmas, and Allie Hazelwood wrote one of them, and it was the only one I liked out of like the 4.
Yes.
And so Allie does this incredible thing in her writing, and I've only ever read one other book. And she does this incredible thing where it's like, all right, we're joking. This is such a smutty book. She's a smutty author. Like,
Yeah.
and there is some like crazy hot and heavy shit in this book, but she finds this way of like, there is a balance in her writing style that's really deep and intellectual and about the woman and like uplifting women. And like, a lot of times this book, though, Vandy's like, well, I don't really know why I'm into this stuff, but like it makes me like more. It's not like this like get down like bitch like sort of like writing style. Like sometimes
it's not degrading.
It's not degrading. It's more like uplifting. Like, and the way she's able,
I think she definitely did her research.
Yeah, the way she's able to like incorporate that into like a very normal ass romance book with this crazy, hot and heavy, like stuff that the women today are just like trying to consume constantly. I'm like, Aubrey, you've read books that were just smut. Like there's no plot. It's just smut and it's like not fun. But she was able to create tension in a book where they're having sex in like chapter 4. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
I think she did a really good job at this. I want to talk a little bit about the controversies. One, I saw people talking and saying that there was no plot besides sex. And I think if you came away with that opinion, you skimmed until you found the sex scenes.
Yeah, I think that's wrong.
Be real. Be so fucking real. We have 3 like character plots. We have her internal one, we have hers with Luke, and we have hers with Penn. Penn and Luke's character plot is also mentioned in there. We have the whole diver thing. I mean, I don't give a fuck about sports. Let me tell you, I had to read a lot about sports in this book.
And the practices. I don't give a fuck about your practice.
And then there was the research study, which, can we point out, there was a little Raylo fanfic, love hypothesis cameo that popped up in this book. And Peyton and I have not read those books. But as soon as she got to the one professor's like office and she was just describing this guy's post-it notes, I'm like, this has got to be a cameo. I don't know who the fuck this guy is, but like, this is cameo material.
Yes. Speaking of cameo material, a funny thing that happened was I was listening to a lot of this book, and one part came up when she's from Missouri, but they're at Stanford in California. And there was a part where she's like, I miss Pipsqueak, which is her dog back home. She misses her like stepmom or whatever. And she's like, I even miss Misery. And I'm like, what? I'm like, oh my gosh, because the main character in Bride's name is Misery. I'm like, this is a cameo. Like we are connecting out. And I knew about the love hypothesis.
Paranormal world.
And I was like, oh my gosh, she knows about vampires. Like, this is crazy. And so I looked up and it was Missouri. I was like, oh, but I was listening on 2XB.
Yeah.
And so it sounded like Missouri. And I was like, oh my God. But there is a cameo. Just I was thinking the wrong way.
The wrong way. They also say the word checkmate once, and I was like, oh my God, I know that's one of her books.
I caught that too. I was like,
I think that's purposeful.
Yeah.
So,
anyways, we're crazy.
Our other controversy is revolving the spice, the smut level. Now, going into this, you might think, okay, you guys have talked about how this is very like BDSM heavy. This is her spiciest book. It has references to 50 Shades because of its context and the fact that it's centered around these kinky people.
Yeah.
You're thinking, oh, everyone must be complaining that there's too much smut. You'd be wrong.
People want war?
People are saying that it wasn't spicy enough. People are saying that it was too spicy, which means maybe Allie Hazelwood hit the middle.
Or but maybe there's Allie Hazelwood was right.
Complaining and being like, for a book to be championed about like BDSM and kink and stuff like that. And we can get into more in the spoiler section, but you just can't please people. You can't please people,
but also let's be clear here for like, I mean, I like smut. I love reading romance. I'm not like crazy the way that I know some girls are.
Yeah.
I gotta be frank with you. I'm pretty sure she did spice and this whole like world of BDSM in a very elegant way.
Yeah, she let it still be a book.
It was proper. It felt right. Like,
Yeah.
it felt good. And the fact that
So
the
good.
difference I think where people are messing up is that the like dominant in this BDSM relationship actually caught feelings. And a lot of times in these like dom sub like relationships, there is no love. There's no like furthering. It's just in our romance stories that we get, you know, hey, I think I love you. Like, I think I'm falling for you and want you to be like my wife.
But Peyton and I are not into that stuff, so we can't speak for the community.
Yeah. We're not, but like usually I just feel like in 50 Shades of Grey, Christian had so many different relationships that he never was like, hey, like, I want you to mother my future children.
Yeah.
Versus like when he met Anna, I'm only speaking because I don't want to give any spoilers for this book, but in 50 Shades, I mean, guys, come on. Like he falls in love with her.
Yeah.
And so I just think maybe that's the difference is like this truly did become a romance book. And if you're like, yeah, BDSM, like I don't really know if like you do get that. It's just I think done in like a very Peyton like proper way.
I think it had to listen, Ali Hazelwood is a mainstream romance author. If you want hardcore BDSM content, I promise you that there are authors out there on Kindle Unlimited who are giving that to you. I
or go on AO3.
Can't speak for Ali Hazelwood, but I would assume that she probably isn't a super big participant in the BDSM community. I think she did her research. I think she did it well. And I think she wrote a book where it explored that matter in a very tasteful way without turning off. Like, if it was hardcore, Peyton wouldn't have liked it.
No.
So she kind of fed both audiences, you
yes. Know? Especially being a mainstream author. Like, you hit it right on the head, Aubrey. Like, she can't, like, also, why, guys? Like, just go. There are avenues for you out there. I promise. The World Wide Web has them for you. And, like,
to be in your Ali Hazelwood book.
Not in my Ali Hazelwood, okay? Love you, Ali. You did a great job.
All right, let's move into our star rating.
Yes, so as you were talking, I was like, oh my God, I have no idea what I rated this.
I don't remember either, actually.
Okay, I rated it 4 stars.
Okay, yeah.
So I rated it 4 stars in my head, like a 3.5, 3.75. But for Goodreads, let's just call it a 4. My review, I said, Hazelwood has a way of making any romance story a must read. Not my fave, but I really enjoyed reading it. So, like, if you put this next to Bride, I liked Bride more. Just because I don't give a fuck about diving and swimming. But I really loved the inner dialogue of both characters. And, may I add, the mystery, like the mystery around the main love interest and like the way that they weren't together all the time, like built tension and like, So if you like tension, ladies, I just feel like tension in this book was so fucking good.
Yeah, I agree. I gave it 5 stars on Goodreads.
Ooh.
In my head, it's like a 4.5 kind of situation, but I let it on Goodreads bump up all the way to 5 for that rating. I read this book super fast. I think I told Peyton, like, once I hit the 46 percentile mark, I was like, okay, I'm finishing. She's done. I'm going to finish her.
Yeah, it was really easy to finish. It was
super easy to finish. Mm-hmm. Yes. I thought the romance was really good. I loved, like Peyton was talking about, the tension. I think the characters were well developed. I'm not someone who gives a fuck about sports, and I don't think it overwhelmed the story. I was able to be like, okay, yeah, I understand what's going on here. And then it often always related back to the romance in some way. Like something would happen in the sports world that would affect other things, which is kind of how you want it. It all felt very neatly woven for me for a romance book. I don't know. I wasn't going into it expecting a literary masterpiece, and I enjoyed what was there. I think for the promises that I got into this book, you got wet.
I enjoyed my time. We dove in and we got wet. All right, let's move on to the spoiler section. If you haven't read this book yet, please pause, read it, and come back. But it's a perfect time to say that if you want to come back and watch more and then talk with us, please like and subscribe so you are notified of when we post new episodes. We post every week. So please join the fam. We are on Apple Music, Spotify, and YouTube.
And we do mostly fantasy, but I mean, we're here. We're
here, Allie. We're here, Allie. We're here
and
for you.
if there's something that's big in the community of readers, we'll pick it up.
Yes.
All right. Jumping into the spoiler section, I want to go back to the is it kinky enough conversation.
I do have a little bit of a thought about this.
Okay, you go first.
Because mine are never really well thought out. And then you can just bounce off of me. They never are. Okay, so there are some moments in this book I both read and listened to.
Mm-hmm.
They use different narrators for every character, which sometimes is cool. But Luke does have a Swedish accent in the narration. And from a production standpoint, whenever he would talk, the volume would go down. And so sometimes with the accent and then the speaker volume being lower, I didn't always pick up what he was saying. And so 2 things here. 1, user error. It's kind of on me.
Well, it's kind of on.
And also, it's on me that's like, why would I expect my love interest just to have an amazing American accent? You know what I mean? I love that they were like, no, let's get a narrator that can narrate a Swedish. I really hope the man was genuinely like Swedish and not faking it. So like part of me is like, yes, representation in literature. And then other parts of me is like, but what the fuck are you saying?
Well, they could have made the audio standard. They could have kept the accent, but if the audio's fucked up, like that's not on you.
Like it's almost like the guy recorded his parts, he sent them in and they're like, okay, this works. And they didn't like tweak the audio. So that was kind of a turnoff for me. As far as the kinky stuff goes, because like that just adds into like when he would say kinky stuff, I was like, no. But when I would read it, I'd be like, yes. So that's why I'm like, this is a me thing. I feel like all the time they would mention them being like, well, yeah, you're into kinky stuff. You're into kinky. Like they wouldn't stop harping on like, we fucking get it. You guys are both into kinky stuff. I feel like it kept on getting brought up. And even Penn was like, well, you're into that kinky stuff. It's like, we already went over this 5 other times in the book. Let's just move on, you know?
I agree. And like, I mean, when it was coming from Penn, I could see in the beginning of the book, we saw this like, oh, people are uncomfortable about it. So we like make light of it and talk about it that way. But why they had to keep repeating it back to each other.
Yeah, it was kind of annoying. I'm like, just fuck already. Like, we get it.
Also, I felt like there was a lot of telling versus showing.
Yeah.
And what I mean is like they talk about doing kinky stuff and then I didn't think their sex was that kinky.
No.
I'm sorry. There was no toys. There was no handcuffs. There was no choking even. Like, why have I had kinkier sex than these people?
Yeah, I will agree with you. I was like, when is it gonna get like
50 Shades? It was marketed as 50 Shades. They literally talk about 50 Shades and then there was no 50 Shades.
And to be like completely honest, like I think what was kinky about their sex was the way Allie Hazelwood wrote it. Versus like the actions of what they were doing. Like Allie would use those like hard hitting words like we can't use on the internet or be monetized. Yeah. So like, but she would use those that you don't hear a lot in books. And so it made it like that much more like of like a spice, but they weren't doing things that was like crazy.
No, I mean, there was definitely that Dom sub, dynamic going on.
Yeah, until he fell in love with her and was like,
and then, it was what it was. I enjoyed the blowjob scene, which was the very first sex scene. And if you're a fan of the podcast, we fucking hate BJ scenes.
We hate like BJ scenes.
Don't ever want to. I think Peyton literally said once, if I ever have to read one again, I'm putting down the book and never picking it up.
Yes.
And I think it was done very tastefully as someone who would never.
When we started, I was like, and I was like, okay.
Because it was like playing into that dynamic, but I thought it would ramp up from there. And I felt like that and maybe the one bathroom scene where he like gets her going and then makes her like sit through the whole meeting. Like, I feel like those were our kinkiest moments besides the fact that he was apparently gripping her so tight he was bruising her every time they had sex.
But she liked that. She's like, his marks are still
for
on
sure.
me days later.
She liked that, but like that wasn't really present in the sex scenes.
Yes.
In the sex scenes, I felt like I never got a scene where she was like, oh my gosh, I can feel his fingerings like tightening on my waist enough to bruise or something. It would always be afterwards where she's just like looking in the mirror. And maybe that's just like what I know, what I've heard of the BDSM community. But I was expecting a lot more toys and behavior stuff than just
like, I need this contract. I need
bruises.
this like arrangements. It felt just like two college kids that are like, let's get a little kinky sometimes. Like, that's just what it felt like. It didn't feel like that like adult, but they are also college kids. So maybe like.
Yes, I did see someone being like, they're college kids exploring being kinky for the first time. Like, obviously, whatever works for them works for them. And I think that makes sense. But there was no reason for that contract to be there. I'm so sorry. They did nothing, in my opinion, that would warrant a contract.
No.
The issue is that if you want to talk about, oh, real life, like they're playing, they're getting to know things, like their relationship could get kinkier over time. It's good that they did the contract, sure. But as a reader, seeing that contract scene in the beginning, one, I'm thinking of 50 Shades. And I know that obviously like that's a part of the community, but I'm expecting like that's a Chekhov's gun moment. That's where I'm like, okay, they signed this contract. They're going to do some weird ass shit. And I don't think, in my opinion, they ever did anything that like besides the bruises that I haven't done with my husband. And I wouldn't consider myself really a kinky person.
Or in a BDSM relationship.
Yeah. And so it was just like, oh, we're so kinky, we're so kinky, we're so kinky. And then they never did it.
They're just kinky, horny college kids.
Yeah.
You know
which
what
is
I mean?
fine.
Which is awesome.
It just wasn't what the promise was.
Yeah. So I do agree with maybe some of that like talk back on the internet. But of course, like it just meant that I liked it that much more. Going back into that, the romance isn't the only plot point in this book. Our main character is dealing with a lot of internal strife because she had a horrible diving accident that almost ruined her whole career. And it's crazy to think about, like, because it's so true. But people in college are like going to the Olympics. And it's not until the Olympics happen that I'm like, oh shit, they're younger than me.
Yeah. We're college graduates, baby.
Yeah, but we talked about this in the NS section, but seeing the short flashes of therapy and also the way she talked about therapy of like, oh, I guess I should go to therapy and talk about this was really like sweet and like real.
Yeah.
And the way that she would reference therapy and also like stand up for herself because of the tactics she's learned through therapy is like very relatable and raw, I think, for a lot of college age girls.
And it's kind of like showing that like this is a romance book. This isn't erotica. This has got a lot of other stuff in it, which is, again, to my first controversy, how could you say that there was no plot?
Yeah.
Like just because there isn't action on the page, I feel like sometimes people conflict there being like an action-packed story with no plot, like an internal arc, a character arc is plot. Don't ever pick up literary fiction if you like characters talking isn't and changing isn't enough for you.
Right. Yeah. And you see, and like Scarlett's does have a character arc in this book.
Yeah.
She's not just like like a means to like a body. She's not just a body. She has feelings and growth and connection. And so when she and Penn get paired up for diving partners, this is like, you know, so it is kind of weird. Like it is a weird scenario. Like Penn and Lucas are longtime friends and also longtime boyfriend and girlfriend. But it's one of those things that's like we're with each other because of convenience and like shared experiences. So it's like they have a lot of love for each other, but it's more like friend love.
Yeah. They just needed a college try it out.
Yeah. And I also feel like you don't really realize this when you're younger, but as you get older, you look back at relationships and you're like, wow, I couldn't have done that without that person. And also sometimes in those relationships, the line between friend and like friend love and love gets mixed because you do genuinely love your best friend and you go to them. Like Penn is, I've dealt with a Penn in my life. It's like, he's not your crutch anymore. Like you need to move on and become your own person and find that person. So I really related to Scarlet being friends with Penn, but also loving Luke, and then also respecting the relationship that Penn and Luke have,
Yeah.
but also dealing with jealousy throughout that. Like, that is such a real fucking thing that happens mostly in college.
Because you're so intertwined and connected
This is
all the
so
time.
real because it's like Penn gave her blessing, but like kind of didn't. And it was okay when she was with that teacher, the like teacher guy, until she wasn't. It's like, this is so real. This isn't just like fantasy made up. Like, this actually does happen. Now, Allie took it like to the kinkiest of levels, but like, how relatable.
Yes, I agree with you 100%. I think what was on the page was what should have been on the page. However, when I started the book and the way Scarlett was describing Penn, I was like, oh my God, this gets resolved with a threesome.
I know, she was so doting on Penn. I think she just looked up to her a lot.
We spent just as much time developing Penn and Scarlett's relationship as Scarlett and Luke's relationship. I thought it was going to end in a throuple situation because it was so hard in the beginning about how, like, they're not jealous people. They're always go back to each other, like all of that. I was dialed in. I literally put it as a Goodreads update in the beginning of the book. I was like, this is going to become a throuple. This is a threesome situation. I've seen this film before.
Yes.
That's not where I went. That's not where I went. But up until the very end, I was still like, okay, when are you going to kiss her?
She talked so highly of Penn, and I think it was because, and I've been in this scenario too, I look so like highly upon this person because Penn is older than her. She has more experience. And Scarlett was only given the opportunity to dive next to Penn because someone else got injured. So it's like,
Yeah.
wow, I don't want to fuck this up. And then Penn being like, oh my gosh, you should sleep with Luke. And then she's like, okay, like actually, I really like him. And then it turning into, wait, like I look up to you so much and but I like him. And now I'm caught in the middle of like, what the hell do I do? And like, I don't want to ruin my chances with like you. Cause she genuinely like, you find out through this that like Scarlett doesn't really have a lot of people. She doesn't like have a lot of friends. I think her diving incident just like kind of set her back, and she's kind of more like introspective, and she is like the younger one of the group. And so I think she doesn't want to step on anyone's toes, but she's totally stepping on everyone's toes and she knows it. And I think that's why she's scared.
Well, it's hard because, yeah, Penn was like, yeah, you can sleep with him. And then they started developing feelings, and they obviously didn't tell Penn at all that a relationship was forming. And so then Penn is starting to get jealous because I think she can tell that something's happening, especially when I think there was a moment in the book where Luke wasn't answering Penn's calls, and then they called from Scarlett's phone and he answered. And it's like those kinds of things where, like, in Penn's mind, she's going, wait, I thought you guys were just having fun. And also, part of the friend experience is typically sharing back and forth. So Penn is spending all this time sharing with Scarlett, like, this is what me and the hot teacher are doing. This is the relationship. We're developing all these ways. And Scarlett is obviously not sharing back because the man she's doing it with is Penn's ex.
Yeah.
But it's hard as like a friend if you were in Penn's mind. And I'm saying this because we're about to get to the end of the book. And I don't want to say I'm a Penn defender, but I can also see from Penn's mind, I think I'm becoming best friends with this girl. I'm spending all this time together with her, and I'm sharing all of my stuff. And if she's not sharing, to me, it's because, oh, maybe she just doesn't have anything to share. Maybe it's because it is so casual in her mind.
Yes.
And not as much about the like, hey, it's awkward to tell you about how much I like fucking your ex.
Yeah, it's a really awkward, especially since they're new friends.
Yes.
It's a really awkward situation to be in because you don't want to lose her, but you also don't want to lose him. And you like, I get where both sides are. And I am a Penn defender in a way because we create like, oh, well, they're just friends. Like, they're just fucking. Like, there's no feelings there. And like, in the back of her mind, she's like, and if this teacher thing didn't work out, I could just go back to Luke. and he's always going to be there to save me. And that's a character flaw on Penn's part. And I'm really happy by the end of the book, she comes to and realizes that is a character flaw on her part. And she can't be mad because, you know, and I actually really respect that Luke is the one that put her in that place, because I always feel like in these books, it's the woman's job to be like, okay, like girl power, kumbaya together, let's talk about our feelings. And the guy's like, oh, cool, you guys are good. Okay, cool. Like, I love that it was like, because for a while I'm like, the fuck, Luke? Like, get in there and talk to your best friend, who is your friend and your girlfriend first. Like, you had the first contact, like, with Penn than Scarlet. Like,
yeah. Well, Luke told Penn originally that they were sleeping together.
Exactly. And so, anyways, I understand, like, in your head you make the story of like, well, this is the way it is, until you realize like, oh wait, this is deeper than I thought. And she just needed like a 5. She needed to take 5.
She needed to pick her moment, and her moment shouldn't have been Scarlett's moment. But like, also, that's kind of like, it's a book. We want the juicy big explosion.
And they're young.
Like, if all characters thought like with a level head, we would get no plot. We'd get no story. So was I pissed at Penn for ruining Scarlett's moment when she just won nationals or whatever, and she's like cheering with Luke, and it seems like their relationship's in a really good spot, and then she flips her shit? Like, yes, obviously that's the most annoying fucking thing ever, for her to try to say that Scarlett was stealing her life. But I get it.
Also,
I get it, girl.
Like, think it from like a 22 or 22-year-old head. Like, you've been working so hard for this. And if you look at the, like, it's a jealousy thing. Like, Scarlett was kind of jealous of Penn, and then Scarlett got that life, like, genuinely, like, she worked for it. And now she's like a very good person that's in this like place where Penn is like supposed to be. And if I was Penn, I'm sorry, I would be feeling the same damn way. I'm like, wait,
yeah,
that was my boyfriend. That was my podium. Like, what is going on? And she's already kind of heartbroken at this point.
Yeah. Which I love that Allie made it realistic. Because so sometimes realistic. We have these explosions, and it's like, y'all could have just talked for 2 seconds and made sense. You know, this wasn't really a miscommunication. This was like a understanding of deeply rooted issues. And going back to the threesome thing, the third act breakup was really between all 3 of them.
I know. I was waiting. I was like, well, how is Scarlett and Luke going to have this sort of like breakup?
Because he's so obsessed with her.
Yeah. And I was like, there's no way. And we find out it's like a friend thing, which I loved, because I'm like, I don't want to read any more about strife in the relationship or like figuring shit out. I am curious. Going back to like, I love reflecting on a book and picking like a favorite scene, like a favorite part. Like, is there a part of this book that like, or like 1 or 2 quickly that like stick out to you and you're like, you know what, that part like made me kick my feet, or that part made me laugh or get horny? Like, what parts?
You first.
One of them for me, there's a couple. I love any sort of scenario. Oh, the one where she like left the party early and like she Irish goodbye. And next thing you know, he's like knocking at her door and he's there. Because he went to go help Penn, and she's like, no, like, I'm getting in the middle of this. Like, I'm just going to go. That's such a Peyton fucking move. That's so, like, I'm in the way. And then I'm such a good Irish goodbye. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to go. But the fact, like, that he showed up and, like, was at her door. The second one I really liked was anytime he would sneak in things. Like, her chamois, like, the tie-dye chamois. She left her underwear at his house at one part of the book. And they're like, oh, Luke said you left this at his apartment. And she's like, oh my God, it's my fucking underwear. Like, blah, 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 blah. And it turns out to be the chamois. And I'm like, oh, like, that was really cute. I'm like, oh, he's down bad for her. And then, of course, anytime he's like, I watched the live stream, or like, that's effort. Effort's sexy to me.
Effort is sexy. Well, I liked the actual sexy scenes. I thought it was hot when he... what I talked about earlier, when he like got her going and then made her like sit.
Tension. I love
That
tension. I'm here
tension.
for that. I'm here for that.
Yes, like we spent a lot of these like build up moments and then just sit in that. I feel I don't know. Even like I thought it was crazy the moment when like they had sex during the one party, and then like he was like talking to someone and he just stayed there. Like there were just like those were I guess like the kinkiest moments in the story if I'm trying to like think back. It's been a minute for me.
Yeah. I love how Allie in this book, she kept the romance alive almost by like there'd be parts in this book where she'd give us like narrative space and time of like, I didn't see him for a month. And you're like, you guys haven't seen each other in a month. And it just gives that like that, like I heard Brittany Broski say this in a podcast. She's like, let's bring back like yearning. Like
Yes.
I want to bring back this like the yearning for each other. Because that is this, like, when you look back at, like, Jane Austen novels, like, that is the sexiest shit of, like, I haven't seen him in 3 months, and you're, like, yearning for each other. Like, oh my gosh. That's what makes, like, this is what adds stars to books. But if they're always, like, in the same space, it's like, okay.
Well, there's no reason for it to not just become a relationship. And relationships are amazing, but they're not, like, what you want to read about. You know what I mean? You want to read about the falling in love.
Yes.
I also thought it was super cute when they were like separated for a really long time. And this might have been during like their breakup when they started sending pictures back and forth to each other, like not sexy pictures, but like just pictures throughout their day, because that's something that when I was long distance with Jacob, we used to do all the time, where like there's not enough to like keep the conversation going on texting all the time, but to just like send a picture and be like, this is what I'm up to, and back and forth, I thought was super cute.
Yeah. Yeah, I loved the moment when you realized, like, I mean, it never was from the beginning, let's be clear, that they genuinely, like, started falling for each other.
Yeah.
But those, I think, are kind of, other than the Swedish accent and the audio, which, like, I feel horrible saying because I love that they did that because he was Swedish. Other than that, I love that, like, when they went to nationals, like, he had to sit with, like, the Swedes, and, like, they were separated, and, like, he just I love whenever he did a race, and he would, like the one time she called him, and he FaceTimed her back right away, and she's like, "Shit, he's literally racing right now." And he, like, FaceTimed her back the minute he's still, like, dripping sweat, like, well, he's still wet and, like, out of breath, but he, like,
'Cause he didn't
FaceTimed
give a
her. And she's like,
like, "My girl?"
She's like, "Did you win?" And he's like, duh, like, of course I won.
Obviously.
I was like, oh my God. I was like, the confidence, like, but not like the confidence of like ego. He's like, I won. Like,
like we don't even need to mention it.
But he like finished the race like 20 seconds ago. Saw she FaceTimed and like FaceTimed back right away. I was like,
priorities.
That's the shit. Like, that's the crack that Allie Hazelwood puts in her books. I don't care
intentional men.
I don't care how smutty that shit gets my feet kicking. Anyways,
well, let us know what your favorite scene was. Do you think the book was kinky enough?
I want to know what everyone's like. We just put Emily Henry a lot because we've read most of her books at this point, but we haven't. This is only my second Allie Hazelwood full
we
story.
Also did the Two Can Play, the short little novella thing.
Oh shit, so this is like, we did 2 short stories by her and then 2.
So we're at like 2.5.
We're like 2.5. And so I would love to know what everyone's like ranking. Like from like, what's your number 1 down to however many. I know the girls that watch this love Allie Hazelwood. So I'm curious because I'd like to go back and read some of her backlog because they are just great palate cleansers and they really up your reading goal when you need them to. Doesn't matter how long they are. You just plow through them. So with that being said, please like and subscribe and let us know what you rated this book. I think Allie said it was her favorite one so far. I heard that Bride is getting a sequel.
Yes, mate. October 7th. We will see you there, girl.
2 books in 1 year.
That's that romance author.
She's a fiend. She's absolutely
and there's theories that there's another book coming out in between because in her Instagram bio, I was talking to Peyton about this off camera. It says like author of Deep End, aka Wet, like WHET, because that's what the fans are calling it. Then she has like a blank spot with 2 emojis. And then she has another like 2 emojis that says like mate or like bride 2, I think is what it said at the time. But so people think that blank spot is a 3rd book coming out between Deep End and Mate in October.
She's crazy.
Crazy. But we will read it actually.
But we will read them. Do not worry.
So see you guys then, I guess. Thank you so much for joining us and happy reading.
We should read romance more.
Yeah.